Hello, everybody. I am Janine Turner. Welcome to Northern Disclosure, where my handsome and brilliant actor and friend, Rob Morrow, and I walk through all the episodes of Northern Exposure. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. Of course, you can watch on YouTube or you can listen anywhere you want to listen. And we have a great show today. It was actually a wonderful show entitled Our Tribe. So, Rob Morrow, howdy.
Hey, Janine, nice to see you. I know you're up against it. How's your mom doing?
Yeah, prayers for my mom. It's just she's 88. What can I say? And I'm her sole caretaker and broken her hip. Now she has AFib, and it's a lot.
Well, she's lucky to have you. Yeah, this is an interesting, sweet show. It was written by David Assal. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I don't really remember David, but he wrote 6 episodes, including, I know, one of your favorites, Russian Flu.
Yeah, I loved Russian Flu. And this one had the similar kind of tribal feeling. And I have some thoughts about that too. It was kind of dawned on me, but yeah.
Yeah, and it was directed by Lee Shallett, and then she has she's hyphenated, I think, since we worked with her, and her name is, I think it's Shamel. So Lee Shallett Shamel. And Lee only directed 1 episode. I thought she did a terrific job with this. I don't know why. I was thinking about, we only had 2 women directors, I believe, in 110 episodes. And I always love women directors. I didn't know why we didn't have more. The other was Joan Tewksbury, if you remember, who worked with Bob Altman for years and years. And she was lovely. And I remember Lee being, great. So I don't know why. I guess back then there were less women in the DGA and things like that.
That's what I was going to say. There just weren't a lot of female directors.
Yeah, you're probably right.
She had a good sense of she did. Now that there was kind of that, I loved her angles. I loved the way things just played too, like where you and Ed are underneath the trees. It just stayed in that shot, and you just listened to that beautiful dialogue, and also that scene on the roof with John Cullum and I, and then I'm just kind of looking up and talking. I thought that was a very sort of poignant, sensuous shot. I thought.
Love that, and the whole thing was built. And it had a romantic kind of mystical quality because of that. The stars were closer because it was a backdrop, and there was like the little bit of the brick sign in the lower left-hand corner. It was a beautiful set, and very unusual for Northern Exposure. We tended to be, when we were outside, I mean, yes, I guess we did build some outdoor sets, but something like that, it's unusual to see on the show. Don't you think? And it looks
Are you talking
great.
about where I was on the roof in that shot?
Yeah.
And I tried to remember back. I'm like, I don't remember climbing up wherever we were, because we had
no, that was a build.
But didn't we have to still kind of climb up or so? No, they just.
I don't think you had to climb far.
Like
it was up a platform. Yeah, I'm sure a little bit, but not a ladder. It was just a platform, and very well done. And I thought,
and we never really. It was kind of fun the way Maggie came in. She was all energetic. She had all that energy. She was just frenetic.
What is that about? It never paid off.
I don't know, because it didn't really go anywhere.
I know. I was like, I thought you were going to have this whole episode where you hadn't been sleeping and you're drinking coffee and also it was really funny. I don't know whether you did this intentionally or not, but you kind of slid into, how Kramer on Seinfeld slides into a room? You kind of slid into the bar, like you almost crashed into it. But I don't know what that was about. It didn't have any.
Because I don't really remember the show, quite frankly. I don't really. Maybe I remember the telescope. I maybe remember filming with John Cullum and the telescope, but the rest I kind of really don't remember. So I didn't know what was going to happen. But I have to say, you did a phenomenal job. What a great show for you. It was kind of one of these kind of sleeper ones. So it's not the ones that we always think of as our favorites. But man, you were good. And I loved your hair. It was kind of longer, and it was just kind of sexy. And you were in all those angst-ridden moments you had to portray, and then running across the street when you thought you were going to be, tattooed.
I know. I looked at that and thought, oh my God, if I had to do that again, I'd be like, maybe he should walk fast. I was running so hard. I was like Dustin Hoffman in Marathon Man.
Right. But what people don't know is that you had the wide shot. Well, maybe they do know, but for those who don't know. And so you're physically running. And then when it cuts into the radio station with Chris, you haven't been running. And so we have to recreate that. I had to do that so many times. You have to, and we have to do it in Cliffhanger. I had to do it a zillion times. But I would always go run around before they say action, and then run in the room. Because you have to how did you get that energy back up? The same kind of way?
Well, if I know me, what I probably did was run in place and held my breath until I
Mm,
thought I was going to die. And they probably rolled the camera. And then when I was about to pass out, I ran into the shot. And, because you hear me, you can hear me. I can barely breathe. I wasn't
right.
faking that.
And then you had
That's
to do it again in the other camera angle because then you go sit down. And I think that that's the kind of craft that we as film and television actors have to create. Is
right.
you bring it in the master, you gotta do it again in the wide, in the cowboy when you're standing, when you're sitting. But you did a fabulous job. I have some favorite lines. You
Well,
ready?
let's hear them. Yeah.
Okay. All right. When she's not that scene when you're talking about how Marilyn refuses to speak to you with Ed and they're packing up your things. That scene. You had that great speech. You're out in space alone against this galactic vortex of disapproval
Oh
when
yeah.
someone
Great
doesn't
line.
speak to you. Yeah,
Sure.
you're out in space alone against this galactic vortex of disapproval. I know people who operate that way with loved ones, and that really described it. But that was a good scene. Oh, when you were talking about was it what you were talking about with Ed about how we kind of all come together now, like a global village type of thing, and
Uh-huh.
then Ed gives you a look and he says, "But you can't hang out with 5 billion people."
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't
And
that a
it's
great
just,
line?
yeah. And interesting, by the way, it's 5 billion. That's 1993 or 93, I think, maybe 92. Eh, We have now 8+ billion people on the planet.
Hmm. But
Right.
it symbolizes what's happening with our society today. We kind of think we're hanging out with people because we're watching and texting and streaming, but we can't quote unquote hang out with 5 billion people. Okay, this was a great line. I'm going to use this one. Emotional weather report. Cloudy with a chance of rain.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? That was
Of
John
course.
Corbett.
Yeah. It was lovely.
Emotional weather report. Cloudy with a chance of rain. I only have a few more. Sometimes it's hard to avoid the happiness of others.
Oh, that's profound. Yeah.
That's profound,
Huh.
isn't it? Another really profound one. No coming into consciousness without any pain.
Wrote that down as well. Carl Jung.
Yeah, Carl Jung. I liked him. I think I would have liked him a lot better than Freud. Um,
I think you're probably more aligned with Jung than Freud.
yeah. That's what I thought I just said.
You
Did I
did. I'm
just
just
say
saying
that?
you
Oh,
are. I
right.
agree with you.
Yeah. So those are my favorite lines, and those are some profound lines. I mean, it's not every day you get to watch a show and hear lines like that.
So it's always interesting insights on the show. So this is an interesting show for us. This is the first time we have a guest who has not worked on the show. She is I think she would call herself a super fan. She's really lovely, charming, smart. She is S3E Cupp, and she is CNN's S3E Cupp, and she also hosts the podcast Off the Cupp with S3E Cupp, and she's written for everything from the Washington Post to the Daily News to the American Spectator to Newsmax, Slate. I mean, she's just a gem of a person, and every time I see her, she tells me how much she loves the show. So here we have S3E Cupp as our first non-participatory guest. Hey, S3E.
I'm so honored. Of course, I'm a super fan. That's how you describe it. Yes, I'm a super fan.
I saw a clip once when Rob was on your show and you were talking about the crush that you had on Rob, right? And I thought, what a good show for you to talk about because Rob looked really sexy in this show, didn't he?
He did, but the crush was on Dr. Fleischman. This is important because Rob and I need to maintain a friendship.
That's right. I got my wife
That
out
is
there.
not-
She's got
that-
her husband over there.
Yeah, well, it does not become awkward because my crush was on Joel Fleischman, and it was real. It was real. I told Rob at the time on the pod, like an archetype I had not seen before, like of a man that I could, aspire to know or be with. We just hadn't seen it at 10 or 11 or 12 or however old I was. And I just thought, wait, smart Jewish doctor from the city who's a baseball fan. Like this is a guy out there for me.
And you grew up where, S3E?
Boston.
Boston. And so you started watching the show, you say you were 10, 11, somewhere in that ballpark.
Whenever it started is when I started watching.
Now, I know you're an intellectual, so were you already kind of predisposed to that? You know, there's probably wasn't a lot out there on TV like that, right? I mean, what Twin Peaks, maybe Saint Elsewhere.
Yeah, which I wasn't interested in. And there were very few shows we could all, my parents and I, could sit around and watch that was both, you know, thought provoking, but appropriate. You know, I was over kid shows for sure. And it was like Murder, She Wrote and Northern Exposure.
Right. Yeah.
And Jeopardy and the news. And so like these were the things we all watched together. And I loved this show so much. I loved the escape of it. I loved the pace of it. It wasn't, you know, it was so slow. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it was deep. I thought of myself as a deep thinker as a child, you know? So I really liked that it went to like deep thoughts. And all of your relationships were just so great and fleshed out and wonderful. And it was quirky, and I appreciated the dialogue. You know, I'd later come to work with Aaron Sorkin on some TV projects and like just really appreciated the attention to the dialogue. Janine rattled off some great lines, but like one of my favorite from this episode was just, you say, "What's that?" And Ruth Ann says, "A line."
Right.
So
oh, I haven't seen right then, and he says, "I haven't seen one of those in a long time."
Forever. I loved that's a line. I mean, these callbacks to life in the city and where you came from were just so expertly put in. You never get a chance to forget that Joel doesn't want to be there. Joel,
right?
You know, you never get a chance to settle in. And you're always reminded that Joel comes from somewhere else.
So when you first, so you must have this must have ignited some interesting kind of explorations for you, you know, in terms of literature and philosophy. And you must have kind of, I'm sure you went and got the books that we talk about. You must have loved Chris Stevens then, right? I mean,
Of course.
He's my favorite character. He's my crush.
Yeah, I mean, he was a little...
As well as Janine, as well as Maggie.
Oh, thank you.
Right. Yeah, he was a little too hippy-dippy to be my crush, right? You were Dr. Joel, the city doctor was the crush,
right.
Was the fantasy. But I just loved his, you know, his radio wisdom, and it also it sparked like a love of wanting to get out and see more. And you know, many years later, I'd go to Alaska, and I've been to Alaska 3 or 4 times now.
Did you go to that? You know, there's a town there that says we shot there, and they actually make money. There's like signs and.
Isn't it Talkeetna?
Is it Talkeetna?
That's what I thought. I've been to Talkeetna, and I remember seeing Northern Exposure stuff kind of around.
And they tell people, yeah, I was there too. I mean, I remember we touched down. I was up there for the Iditarod, and we went cruising around in a plane and touched down places. And I think there's more than one place that says we shot there. But for those of you out there in the audience, we shot the show, as you know, in Seattle, and which worked well. It did look a lot like Alaska. I mean, where we shot in the mountains.
Yeah, Rosalind did. Yeah, exactly. And I thought Marilyn was excellent in this episode.
She was so good. And those looks she gave me were so penetrating, you know, and unnerving. I mean, even watching them now.
I have a favorite one when you're at the dinner table, and she's sitting there and you're across the table, and he says, "Joel, you look kind of, you know, like you're upset or something." And she goes, "I tell him that you look like that all the time." We're like, the look on her face. She would have like little, and I'm probably paraphrasing that line a little bit, but she would have this little tiny smirk, you know, but she wasn't really going to let it out, but you could see that it was there.
Yeah. And Joel like spews like a tube of linguistic paste. He just spews and spews and spews. And then Marilyn says nothing. And I love when he says to her, I've grown accustomed to your monosyllables, she just says yes.
Right. That was a great scene, Rob. Well played. And then when she walked away, and you're like, okay, 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 I'll do it.
Yeah, she's really good in this one.
But you know what it showed, Rob? I'm confused today. Are you Fleischman or are you Rob? Is it showed the redeeming quality to all the characters in the town. Is that in the end, even if we would scream and holler and carry on and not want to do something, there was empathy. There was care and empathy for the other person, compassion for the other person. And I think that that's a rarity in today's society as well. But the way that you really cared, you didn't want to upset her. And that's the reason you did everything. And that just shows that Fleischman, as brass as he could be, actually had heart.
No, and also that you're right, and everyone celebrates his kind of, his transformation into this tribe at the end, and you come and just out of nowhere and kiss me on the cheek, like just celebrate. There's been some kind of rite of passage.
It was an excellent show.
Essie, you've seen all the shows, I'll bet.
Oh yeah, and I saw them all at the time, and I'm starting to do like a rewatch with my son, who's 11. He watched one, yeah, and like I said, the pace is so different. I don't know you could make this show today, and so he's not used to like a 10-minute scene that's in one place of just like dialogue.
I think you could make it. I mean, there's shows like Severance. Is very slow paced.
Severance is my favorite show currently on.
Yeah, it's up there. It's high up there for me.
Oh, I love it. But what I love about Severance is, it's the mystery, and it's such a thriller, and there are so many questions that it sets up in the beginning that are like very slowly unpacked over time. And in a similar way, Northern Exposure is sort of slowly unpacked over time.
It lets the poignancy of the philosophy of the show, and it lets it marinate. Well, we talked about that, Rob. Like the souffle that just has to sort of bake, and that's what happens. But I went to an event last night, and the chancellor of the college walked in, and she walked in with her husband. And he was a huge fan of Northern Exposure. But what was interesting is he said, "My daughter loves the show. Let me take a picture of you right now so I can send it to my daughter." So that's always good to hear too, the rising generations, because I think the rising generations really need to be able to have their brains slow down a little bit.
Yeah, there's a weird phenomenon that's happening, in a lot of around the world a bit, in countries where younger generations are discovering the show and seeing something fresh. I mean, I always think that there's something timeless about it. I'm amazed how it doesn't look dated, or rarely looks dated to me.
And it's also not violent. We haven't talked about that much, but it's not violent.
Right, I agree. I mean, that's to me what as an audience person, I'm searching for shows that are not violent. I mean, I watch them because they're good, but like I want, that's why I like the show Stick with Owen Wilson. It's got a heart to it, and it's not maudlin or or treacly or anything, but it's hopeful. I want hope, right? And Northern offers hope.
And I said last week. I believe it was last week, Jeff Melvin, one of our favorite writer-producers, Essie, was on, and he talked about the fact that, there was only one married couple, and, no pets, nobody had a pet. And I thought, that's interesting. So today when I was watching it, I realized we're all each other's family, except for Holling and Shelley, who are married. The rest of us we don't have our family around. Our mothers, and they come visit, right? But it's just ourselves. We have become each other's family in the tribe.
You could say that the title of the episode, Our Tribe, is,
not just about the Native American tribe, but about our tribe.
Hey, so we get asked to, promote all kinds of things on this show, but this one for me is so easy because I love digital frames, and Aura Frames has, risen above, head of the class in terms of digital frames. I was an early adopter. I'm a hobbyist as a photographer, and I made the transition from film to digital photography years ago. And almost, 15, 20 years ago, when the digital frames first started coming out, I got one instantly. And I loved it, except that it was such a hassle to load photos that basically what happened was I put the photos in and it lived that's all I could get those photos in, and I never went back to it again. So it was great for those photos. But with Aura Frames, which is so genius, you can load them with the app. You get the app, you put your photos in there and they're in there, and then you can add and add and add. And it's the coolest thing is giving a gift. So, for instance, I went on a trip recently with my mom and my sister, and when I saw this Aura Frames, the first of all, it's a beautiful frame itself. It just looks great on a table, but it comes in a really cool box. And I thought, oh, I'm going to give this to my mom for the holidays coming up. And what I can do is I can load all my videos with sound and all the pictures from the trip, and I can have my sister do it simultaneously. She lives far away from me. She puts it in, and when my mom gets the gift, she opens this beautiful box, she plugs it in, and there's our whole trip, video with sound and pictures, and then she can even add her own. So this thing's a no-brainer. And then you can keep adding photos really easy. And that, to me, is the thing. It looks good and it's easy to load the pics. So I can't say enough about how cool this is. I'm hoping that Aura Frames, now that I said such nice things, they're going to send me a couple more because I want to give them as gifts, and I want one for my own. Now I've given the one that they gave me away. So what I'm going to tell you is a couple things. For a limited time, visit auraframes.com and get $45 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code Northern at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code Northern. This exclusive Black Friday Cyber Monday deal is their best of the year, so order now before it ends. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, and no kids. Sometimes kids are used as a device, right? And you really had to get into this family of grown-ups without the bells and the whistles, the pets and the kids and the romantic, besides the two of you, storylines that would drive it. Like, you really just have to get into life in this small town.
And the pets are part of that. Pets are animals. It's always amazing to me.
Goat. The goat in the show was great.
The goat, Dizzy Gillespie, who I named Dizzy Gillespie. But the opening shot has, I think those are llamas.
Yes, but why?
No reason. Like, it's just
that's never explained.
Never explained, which is great. And that's all we had Ann Gordon.
And then, did you see Ann Gordon there? There was a shot with the American flag, and you're walking down the street, and the dog is standing up with his paws on her shoulder, and she's feeding it. Did you?
I didn't catch that. No,
I saw that. At first I thought it was Shelley because of her bangs and her hair, but I totally saw that, and I was like, oh,
Holly was so. He's so loving when he gets flummoxed and confused and unsure of himself, and I love that storyline with him trying to rediscover this relationship through the star,
a lost flame.
But it's so unexpected, and as you're seeing Holling, shut down the brick and turn people away and act kind of weird about it, and receiving these packages, you're kind of. The mind goes to, well, what's he doing in there? And my mind, the cynic, he's doing something he shouldn't be doing in there.
Yeah, me too. I went there too. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because even though that would never come from him, his character, but you're still like, well, it's got to be something kind of shameful. And you'd never guess in your mind that this is what he was there doing. And it's so romantic and... you just feel for him, but what a lovely storyline. What a lovely storyline, because they could have gone in a million directions there.
That's true. And there was that moment, though, when I said, he and I were talking, and he goes, and nobody knows except me and his ex-flame, and now you. And the little look I got on my face, the little smile, I thought, oh, that's a nice bond, because I love everybody in the show. But, that was a fun little bond for Colm and for Maggie to have, because you don't always see that. But I have to say, one of the scenes I really loved as well, and Rob, we got to talk about yours because you had so many good scenes, so many. But when Maurice walks in at the end, and Corbett wants to go drive 200 miles to a bar, and he goes, son, I'm going to take you. I've seen that look, and it didn't end up well. I thought, oh, that's when that family thing hit me.
Yeah, and it's interesting that bar is the next bar is 200 miles away in Sleet Mute, right? We were they kept they never ceased to overemphasize the isolation, that we were
Yeah.
that the characters had.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob, can I tell you when you ate the lasagna with your hand? We got to
Yeah.
talk about that choice. It
It was
reminded
so
me very much
gross.
of Elf, of the Elf, the movie, when he's shoving all the food in his mouth. But to eat the lasagna with your hand and then you did it again. Talk to us about that. That you didn't like go, wait, maybe because you looked for a minute. I thought you thought maybe I should be using a fork, but that's not where you went with it.
I don't know whether that was written or I did it or whatever. It's how it came about. But we were watching it last night, my wife, and she was so grossed out. I could just feel her thinking, like, "Oh my God, who is this person I'm married to? He's disgusting." It was so like, it's I guess if you're starving, that's what you do.
But it was a great choice.
It was great.
It was a great acting choice because in all those years of acting classes, right? It's like take it way out there, take it so far emotionally. I remember I did an audition once, and the director said to me, "You've got more in you than that." I'm like, okay. So I went back in. I was like full thrown emotional. I took the table and tossed it over, whatever. He goes, "Yeah, that's what I was talking about. You got the job now." You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean you keep it there. You can bring it back. But I loved that choice that you made because it was so far out there, and it takes guts to do that. Most actors get a little intimidated by the camera and whatever, and you got to kind of keep it in this little box. You just went all in and just you took it out there.
And mind you, Marlon Brando said to advice to actors: never do anything you don't want to have to do 40 times. So you see me eat that, but you're thinking I probably did that like 15, 20 times.
God.
You were full.
It's funny, there's a meme, believe it or not. I for one reason or another, I've had to do a lot of eating scenes in my career. And there's a meme on the internet about it. Like people talk about me eating, like in Billions. I had these scenes where I was just stuffing my face. In Quiz Show, I was stuffing my face. In Northern Exposure, there's so many scenes that it's caught people. Some people think it's like the greatest eating they've ever seen, and some people are repulsed by it. But it's so
That's
funny.
amazing.
Every time one of those scenes pops up, someone I noticed that on social media.
Well,
People start
I have a
talking
real
about it.
pet peeve. I have a real pet peeve, two pet peeves. One, when you're watching an eating scene and nobody's really eating. It's
Well,
like,
that's
come
part
on,
of my
everybody,
reasoning. Yeah,
eat.
I agree
Let's
with
eat.
you.
Let's be ugly. So I would always eat. But the other thing I hate, and y'all have seen this, and now you're always going to think of me when you see this, coffee cups that don't really have any coffee.
Kills me. I'm with you there.
Bags, like suitcases or boxes that have nothing in them. I'm like,
with you there.
oh, there's nothing in that.
But like,
You
if
can
you
spot
notice,
it every time.
or you look at dinner scenes with macho actors, and they're like eating a piece of lettuce, cutting it up, and just eating it. Yeah, that's funny.
We can tell. We can tell when that happens. We can tell.
And I never understand why it's so obvious. It's just it feels like to me everything that you can do where you don't have to worry about acting, you should do. So as a director, I try to, if there's something in the bag, you should have it. It affects the way you behave. But that's I'm right. I'm with you on that point, Janine.
Let me ask you this. The goat plays prominently in this episode.
Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah, Dizzy Gillespie. And there are times where we just hear a random crash in your office, at your house. Was that like whoever handled the animals, was that he's just going to go and break stuff? Or was that like added in? Or did you just have to be like, this goat is here and I'm just supposed to let this goat break whatever it breaks?
It's probably both. You clearly, I could tell that we were just kind of going with the flow in some of those scenes. If the goat wasn't on screen, it was either added later or it was done in practical. Someone, like an assistant director, was off screen making the noise so that I could react to it. Or they had the goat on set, but usually if the goat wasn't in the shot, it wasn't on set. They would get rid of it because of that, for that very reason.
Yeah, they're not very, I mean, they're trainable in a way, but like they're loud, they go where they want to go. I mean, it seemed like that could have been a very, very chaotic, but
you can tell when I'm walking with the leash and I have the goat. You can tell it's like I'm struggling because I'm like holding the leash up here.
It's not a dog.
Right.
Well, I like the scene when they talk to us about the scene where the goat comes up and starts drinking your tea out of the coffee cup.
Right.
Was that planned? I mean, obviously you can't train a goat to come drink out of the coffee cup. So talk about that a minute.
Well, it looked to me like it was spontaneous because then it spilled all over the table. And, I didn't do anything about it. So I think it probably was spontaneous and we just rolled with it. I mean, that's the fun of it, is just seeing what happens. I wouldn't mind seeing the outtakes because I'm sure there's a lot of weird outtakes,
Yeah.
Those are great
Animals.
moments. Those are some of the most golden moments when things happen like that. But the goat was, you saw Anne a lot in that show, our animal trainer, because
Oh, that's funny. I didn't see it. Where else did you see her?
No. You
Oh, you
dealt
mean
with
just
her.
the effects of
Yeah.
her? Oh, I see what you mean.
No,
Yeah,
she was on set with you handling the goat as the animal wrangler.
off
So you
camera.
must-
Yeah,
Yeah, in other words, you were working with Anne a lot.
absolutely. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the goat. And the way you have to give away all your things, but you didn't know you'd have to really give away all your things, and then you don't really get your things back.
Right. It's a
You gotta
cultural
swap them.
conversion, they call it, right? And then I love when Chris says, there's going to be a flesh sacrifice to come.
Right.
That's when
we see
we
you
cut to
zoom
me
out.
running. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so good.
that was a good scene.
So good. But I love that in the end, it's a plaque. Like you get a plaque and
Right.
and they're like, let's eat. And you're like, that's it?
And it says bingo. It says bingo above,
Yeah, bingo. But like charting your resistance, from the beginning of the episode to your succumbing
Yeah.
at the end of the episode, and then having it actually not be as bad, and actually having it kind of work in the way I'm sure they intended it, where you just feel like, oh, great, I have this adopted family now, was just so beautiful. And those scenes with Ed in the woods, like it was all just really beautiful. And you got the sense, even through your frustration, because you act incredibly to show us how frustrated you are and nervous and scared and annoyed at times. Even through all of that, you knew it was going somewhere that was going to pay off at some point. Like there's a plan here and it's actually going to be okay. It was beautiful.
I don't think he did know that. I don't think he
Well,
did know.
I don't think he consciously knew it, but I think, there's something about the transformations that he makes, the kind of metamorphoses that he makes over the arc of the whole show, it's fascinating because they're just, he takes one step forward and one step back because, the next week he's just going to be the curmudgeon he was. But I don't know if I'm imagining it or projecting it, but now watching these shows with some distance from them, I see an incremental, change. I do. And I remember, trying to be conscious of that when we were shooting it, was that he's got to be moving forward. There has to be a residual, net result from these events, that he's forced to go through them. But you could make an argument that another character would just say, "Hey, fuck this. I'm not doing it. Fuck you." But he doesn't. He kind of like I guess to your point, he kind of knows on some level that he has to go through this.
Well, but that's what I went back to, because you were a good person. You had empathy, you had heart, and that was Fleischman's saving grace.
You're right. That's a good way to put it, Janine. And it's like that. It's almost like his heart and his compassion had to be revealed to him before he could take ownership from it. And over the series, that's his journey.
Yeah, and it also gets really boring for actors to play the same thing over and over and over and over, the same note.
For sure.
But I think that we were so lucky with these scripts. I mean, they really were like what we say, short stories. It was just these scripts should be compiled into a book. You know how they did that with Hamilton? They were selling the script. You could buy the script in a book. They should sell these scripts, compile. Oh, we should talk to somebody about that. We wouldn't see any money from that, but I mean, that would be really cool to have all our select scripts put in a book.
Right. I mean, you can get them online.
You can?
Yeah, you can get a lot of them for sure.
Really? Like where?
Just look up Northern Exposure script in the episode, like because when I was writing something, I was looking at a lot of scripts for sure.
Yeah, I've got them in some old box somewhere.
What's interesting in this is Maurice. Up until this episode, we always thought that Maurice was one of the Mercury 7 astronauts, right? And then all of a sudden, it's revealed that he wasn't. for the first time. It's like a contradiction, when he says Alan Shepard, got the shot that he didn't get. I don't know if that was accidental or it was to the point where they were like, oh, whatever, no one's going to notice it.
Did he say he was one of the 7 ever?
It's implied a lot. Yeah.
Maybe Maurice wants people to kind of think that, and because everybody in a way in the show was sort of revealing something they don't reveal to anybody else, and maybe the moon made him do it. Because Holly never revealed to anybody else about the star, but to me, and maybe Maurice. And it was interesting when we went back to that last shot. By the way, there was no moon. It's like the moon had gone away. The moon was a big focus in all the outdoor shots.
Oh, that's
and
very
then
observant.
When you and Ed are lying there, it was a shooting star, but no moon.
That's interesting.
But also in that scene where he's revealing that Chris is asleep, he's
Right.
really telling anybody.
True.
He's telling
That's
us,
funny.
the audience. But
Yeah.
like Chris is asleep in the back of the car. Maybe this is Maurice's confession, for himself.
I'm wondering if that was even John Corbett. I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone standing.
Yeah,
No, it looked like him. It was so lumbering.
It
And
did.
that was the other thing. There were a lot of night shoots in this, and the ice and snow were on the ground, so it was actually really cold. I started wearing absolute fur lined vest underneath my jacket. So when people meet me, they go, "You're not as big as you looked on TV." I'm like, "Well, I had a fur lined vest and a thing, and then I had a coat over that, and then I, Sorel boots and big socks and lots of gloves and a hat." But it was cold, but also night shoots. There were a lot of night shoots.
The night shoots. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. They
Which
take
are
they're
hard. The older I
hard,
get, the
man.
more I don't want to do them anymore.
They take a toll because you're flipping your schedule and you're going to bed when you should be waking up and all this. They take a toll. But I just was thinking about the moon, how everyone saw, it was interesting the way each of us had our observation of the moon. Janine, you said you saw Mick Jagger and Ron Howard. I don't think you ever referenced them in the show before, but it's interesting. Like, that's not who I would think. All the guys that Maggie ends up with, none of them resemble Mick or Ronnie Howard.
That's true. Well, maybe that's when she was a Grosse Pointe, Michigan debutante. She was,
She was
not
into
the
those
Maggie
guys.
because she evolved, obviously.
And Ed sees a bunny. I see pizza face.
Yeah. Funny. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, everybody does see what they want. And, I might add to that jacket that they gave you, that vest was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was pretty nice. I wonder if I ended up with it. I wouldn't be surprised if I have it. Yeah.
That was beautiful. That's a beautiful jacket.
I also love the way this episode in particular tackles religion. Because Joel talks a lot about his tribe in Judaism. And then there's also the talk of the spirits. And there's a great line where you and Ed are under the tree and you say to him, "Well, do you believe in spirits?" And he says something like, "No, but they wouldn't care if I didn't."
Right.
And it's like, oh.
Right.
Oh. Like his version was, they're there whether I believe or not. They're there. And your version is, I haven't seen them. I don't know if they're there. I have no proof. I've had no visions. No one in Flushing's ever had a vision. I don't know. But his point was, they wouldn't care. They don't care if you think something happens after we die or not.
I love that. And, Maggie talked about it too. Now that I think about it, Maggie talked about it too. She makes some kind of correlation with that, saying everybody's just right here. We just can't see them, which is very much.
Yeah, when Holly's trying to make sense of Eleanor's gone and what do I do with that? And I missed this. I missed the star. And you said, we're all here and she's not really gone. And earlier, Joel, Rob, Joel talks about memories. We're there in memories. And Ed's like, spirits? And you're like, no, memories. That's how we live on.
It's a fascinating distinction because it made me think, it made me think that memories do have a kind of spiritual realm to them.
Life.
They do.
Yeah.
There's an ether to them. They float up into your consciousness and they carry so much, almost like things are carried in the mist of air,
Yeah. Well, the whole episode is everyone kind of trying to whittle down, how do we get to a place where we all speak the same language on this stuff? my tribe versus your tribe, my version of the afterlife versus your version of the afterlife, and who's really gone, who's not gone, what's a memory, what's a spirit. And you're all coming from your lived experiences and you're having these conversations in your own way, but they're all related and they're all getting at kind of the same existential angst.
Which is so fascinating, which is what it, so much of culture and religion is that. When I back in the day studied and compared religions, I was amazed how the similarities of what was going on in the heart of them all, in the essence of them, when you get away from the doctrine and, and that's, again, I think what brings us, why the show, offers some kind of hope, is that, it finds the similarities in our differences, and that's a good thing.
And it also doesn't shy away from these big questions, which are hard to answer, impossible to answer, and certainly hard to answer in an hour-long television show. But to dive into the questions that matter most, right?
Yeah.
I remember for my master's dissertation, I studied the devotional practices of religious people and sports fans.
Sports fans. Oh, interesting.
So much common ground, and why you're a Jew versus why you're a Yankee fan. Very capricious. You were born into it by geography, by passed on from your dad. You don't generally choose either of these two things. And yet the faith part of these two things is really, really huge and overwhelming. And it's not evidence-based. You love the Mets because you love them, even though they let you down every year. And, all of these things. So when you're describing your tribe, you're like, well, what am I? Well, I'm a Jew. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Met fan, or a Knicks fan. I think you say I'm a Knicks fan.
Yeah, Knicks fan. Yeah,
a Knicks fan. And like, these are your identities. And it doesn't sound weird to put a Jew with a Knicks fan, even though one you'd think would hold much more weight, is much more important, but they're not. They are as important of a tribe to you.
Except when you're dealing with sports, you're not really dealing with the afterlife or spirit. And it's like you might have a tribe that you all love the sport and you love the whatever the sport, but it's not about the afterlife. It's not about spirits and I think what happens in this show is the questioning of spirits. And Rob, I loved your line, that line when you're lying there with with Ed, and you say, "Do I have to believe in spirits to get a vision?"
Right.
What's the requirement?
The classic philosophical, and you're talking about questioning. It's just the questioning that they're not afraid to question. And to kind of cross those borders. And today everyone kind of feels shut down, like you can't do that. But they say, I'm going to question it, and I can question it, and that's okay. And that's the whole, we talk about it a lot, Rob, right?
And questioning leads to it's not easy to question things. And I think Chris says something really profound at one point. He says, I think he's quoting Jung maybe, where he says you got to lie down. Sometimes you got to lie down with your pain.
Oh, I wrote that line down, didn't I? Did I write? Is that one of my lines? Well, I put no coming into consciousness without any pain.
Right. He elaborated on it, but he first in that monologue, he talks about you just got to lie down with your pain. And I think that means, looking at yourself like we're talking about and challenging yourself and asking these questions that we all have within us. I mean, we're all curious.
Yeah, but the way you all get at those questions, not just in this episode, it's just very human. It's very simple. It's not complicated. It's not trying to be edgy, or it's just really like the human existence, the human experience, and the kinds of conversations you'd have in real life about these really big esoteric, existential questions.
The ease with which that happens. Sometimes it's not. I thought about that too, right? Sometimes it's not. Maggie gets mad, you get mad, Holland gets mad, Maurice gets mad. But the bottom line is there's always a resolve at the end of it and acceptance at the end of it. But
there was an early episode. I don't remember all the details. There was an earlier episode, remember, where Maurice wants to shut down Chris's radio show?
Yeah.
because he doesn't like the music and the conversation, right?
Because he's
right?
playing. Is it the Broadway musical stuff?
He was
No.
talking about Walt Whitman. He was talking about
Oh,
Walt
that's
Whitman.
right.
Yes.
Right.
What's cool about that, in my memory, the whole town came behind Chris to say, kind of to say to Maurice, like, you got to open that up again. You can't shut him down. You can't tell him what to play or what to say. And it was done in a really cute, non-political, it was just done in a really nice, a small town way, the way it would happen in a small town.
But in the end, Maurice accepts it
Yes.
and explains it. And then they both say they're sorry.
Yes.
Chris says he's sorry. He says he's sorry. So once again, it's that kind of coming around full circle. Yeah, resolution.
Yes.
Resolution.
It's fascinating. I mean, I'm going to keep coming back to how these shows were written, like what they must have gone through, because they're so carved out, they're so thought out without being, without being preachy. I can't think of, is there anything you watch in this day, SE, that similar to this, or what would be anything?
No, I find a lot of TV today, and this isn't a value judgment. It's true of very good TV and I think not great TV, but like there's a desire for immediate gratification in a lot of storytelling, and that's for all the reasons you can imagine. And I think what this show did so well, was slow you down. You, Dr. Fleischman, were the perfect vessel to take the audience through this journey of slowing down, because, your character had to slow your change of pace in your way of life. And so we did too. And it allowed for these larger conversations and thought experiments, and you had to slow down. And I just don't know that there's a lot of that in today's storytelling. A lot of it is like zooming ahead and flashing back, and you're getting some kind of payoff all along the way to keep you, your attention on it. And I just don't think this worried about that.
No, and Josh wasn't going to let anybody tell him what to do. We've been hearing a lot about that. Not the networks, not the studio. He was going to do, whatever he wanted to do, however he wanted to do it.
Was there ever pushback? Was there network pushback?
Well, I think there was pushback. I think they said they wanted to get rid of the show and him at one point, because it was, but the show was such a success despite, and that gave him the ability to continue to do whatever he wanted to do. And one of the things, Essie, with what you're talking about, it's interesting, is I've realized, especially with Chris in the Morning, they had the greatest, what's the word, Rob? Like the greatest tool, to mouthpiece, to be able to put anything philosophical they wanted to say
like
in
Avatar.
Chris's mouth. Yeah, an avatar, right? And they could, good word. And they could put any music in there through Chris. That was a great, I'm trying to think of the word, but it was a vehicle. It was a great device. Thank you. It was a great device.
Yeah.
So each one of our characters, and it's really, Rob, I was really aware too with your character in the show, how you were always like the straight man, the straight man, the straight man, the straight man, and everything around you was funny. And like what Ed would do was funny. The goat was funny. And Marilyn was funny. So you're kind of the straight man for everyone else, and they bring in the comedy around you, which makes it worth. But I don't know what Maggie's device, what that device would have been, except just to show an outdoorsy, complicated kind of character. I don't know, but you really, really see it, I think, in your character, and you see it in Chris in the Morning. Just that they could put anything they wanted in his mouth. As a writer, that's kind of cool, because we're all writers, it's like, wow, anytime I want to say something, I can just go over here. And the other one the Shelley, right? They could put anything silly in Shelley's mouth that she just played perfectly, because she played it with such innocence. So it was pretty cool.
There was pushback from, initially network really tried to challenge Josh. There were certain shows that, like when they dealt with gay themes, that certain affiliates wouldn't air episodes.
No, they didn't want to air the circumcision show too.
The circumcision show as well. But they ordered, after the initial 2 orders of 8, they ordered 50 episodes, which was unprecedented. And once they did that gave Josh and John an immense amount of power, because, I guess technically they could be fired, but at that point they were investing in them. And they had ultimately total autonomy from then on. I mean, they didn't even. They must have submitted scripts, but they didn't have notes calls, and I don't even think they were getting notes calls on the episodes at a certain point. They were just handing them in.
And they were way ahead in schedule. We found out too through Jeff Malvoin. They really thought things through and had them.
Even though they would sometimes throw out entire scripts, they would get a script in and just chuck it.
Wow.
They were so ahead.
Yeah. Josh is amazing. He's, it's just, again, you appreciate from the distance some objectivity. Josh is one of the two creators. John is not with us anymore, John Falsey. But I always felt that the show more represented Josh's sensibilities. And as we talk to more and more people, that's clear. He was really driving the ship.
He was a taskmaster, they say.
Right.
And I like that too. I like hearing about that really brilliant people, can go out there in the world and they can be tough, and they can have high standards for people and say, this isn't good enough. Don't like it. Go do. I mean, suppose he would say that. Nope, don't like it. Go make it better. Nope. And people don't go, oh my God, how could he talk to me like that? It's just like he's a genius. He had a high bar, and then everybody rose to that bar and wanted to get there. It was like, the rising tide. So,
and there was no real writer's room, which is interesting. They didn't have a writer's room. They just he worked separately with different writers.
And they competed with each other.
Right.
We know that now. They competed with each other as we've had them all on.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Do you have other episodes that stand out, like when you think about the series? Like,
oh, I mean,
That's hard. That's like saying name your favorite movie and you can't think of a single movie at all.
It is hard, but I think for me as a young girl, all the times you two did your dance, right?
Right, yeah.
Was exciting for me because I adored both of you as characters. And I related to Maggie because she's hard charging and, knew what she wanted. And so I always loved your interactions, whether they were not pleasant in the beginning, but sort of the underlying chemistry you could see. And then the progression. I think that was always my favorite part because ultimately I was still just like, a prepubescent girl.
You were a tween.
I was a tween. Yeah. And so, and I think all of those moments were really fun for me to see and watch.
Well, and talking about devices, that was our we filled the sexuality kind of sensuous spark because you really weren't going to get that from Holly. And Chris really never had anybody. Ed maybe, Maurice didn't really have anybody. So we were kind of filling that checklist.
I think you needed it because Joel was young and you were young, and the idea that he would be there for 4 years or whatever was hard enough to stomach. If he was going to have to do it and be like celibate, like it was going to be really tough. So I think an audience needed the promise, the potential that you might have some kind of relationship while you're there.
And no easy trick. The spark was interesting to watch, but there was that is so hard to do, to write keeping people apart, because that's what they had to do. It was like they had to bring us close and then pull us away without seeming contrived. That's a real, and they did it really well but once you do it, it's over. And, I don't know.
Well, that's why Maggie had to forget it. Remember, right. Maggie forgot.
That's right.
That was one of my Jeff Melvoin right there. That was one of my favorite scenes. I'm outside the car. I'm like, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
They were probably just seeing if the audience would buy it, and then they could just say it never happened.
Right.
So even when we did it, it wasn't really done because we had to erase it so we could still have the potentiality that it could be done later.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They only consummate once. Is that true, or is it they?
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that.
Just once.
I think it's a few times, right? Because there was
I think it's more than once.
Yeah, there's one in the tent. I think when Ed shows up and there's a storm and you and I are out in the tundra, and then there's one later in the series where there's the gun goes off.
I don't have to see him. I don't even remember. I do know we had lots of what's the word, sensuous scenes together where it could have been implied.
Right.
you might not have seen the follow through, but it's like you cut away and go, I think this is probably what's happening here. But the audience just didn't get to see it.
But it was enough to keep us invested in in your
it was
storyline.
well
together.
done for sure. I was impressive the way they pulled that off. This has been great, S.E. You're such a. It's so nice to have someone. Isn't it fun, Janine, having someone who's not part of the show, but she feels like she could have been. We could have cast you somewhere in there. Could have had you coming out of the brick, and it would have worked.
Exactly. And you certainly have the intellectualism for the show. You certainly have that mark. And by the way, I'd love to read your thesis, because I think that correlation of tribal and religious and football, because my father, I'd like to read it. I don't know if you ever let anybody read it, but it sounds wonderful. My dad was a football player for West Point Military Academy. So, and he was a all-star football player in Athens, Texas at his high school.
Oh, wow.
Football was like God in our house.
Religion. Yeah, I bet.
And it was on all the time. And if my mother walked in the room and the Cowboys fumbled or something, it was my mother's fault. It was just like, and this is because you walked in the room.
That's great. Yeah.
That's funny.
My parents, there's a play right there. My parents, but yes, Essie, it was a joy to see you again. We can't really remember. We crossed paths in the past, but
I don't know. But this was such a joy and escape, right? From what a crazy week this has been in the world, and in my world of politics. This is so nice to spend an hour talking about something else,
isn't it?
Well, maybe you'll come back again.
Okay, I'd love that because I'm watching them in order again, because it's a really good escape.
That's been one of the greatest parts of doing the show, is that we have to watch it. And I was watching it this morning, and it was just, it's like a Valium.
100%.
It's like, woo! My mother used to always say, she would take me to the movies. I lived in New York at 15 a model, and I was in LA at 17 with my mom. And we would go to Westwood Village and go to all these huge movie theaters. And my mom would just always say she loved to go to the movies because it was 2 hours of escape.
But this is particular escape where it's like literally turning your dial down. It's so nice. It's not escape into action and suspense and heart pounding. It's the opposite. It's such an antidote to what's going on. So I think everyone should watch it.
They wanted us, they kind of said Rob and I were Hepburn and Tracy, a little bit of that Hepburn and Tracy. Remember that, Rob? So that would have been the movies of that era.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
But I was old. I was older, so I wasn't seeing Hepburn and Tracy movies, obviously, in New York, in LA when I was. Well, this has been, Essie, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on, and Rob.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you.
So fun. Thank you.
And I'm glad you have a crush on Fleischman, so that
so we can still talk without it being weird.
And I know what the SE stands for, so I love having that.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
You're like the only one, I guess. Who knows that, right? like I was the only one that knew Holling had a star for a woman that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you. And so next week, we look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to sign off from O'Connell and Fleischman.
Actually, I think it should be Fleischman O'Connell.
In your dreams, Fleischman.
Northern Disclosure is a production with Evergreen Podcasts and executive produced by Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media.